We're still waiting on one more board member, so we get to a quorum. Cassie, can you mute David's mic? I think he forgot to shut it off.
Yes.
And then looks like Wendy's with us, so I think I count 4 now.
Yes, and I'm letting a few more people in. It's going to ask caller ending in 408 to identify themselves. Shirley's coming in as well. Okay, I feel we have a quorum. We have some members of the public in the waiting room. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, and then Mari can call the meeting to order. And I have a delay on my end, so I apologize.
Myself. I'd like to call to order the Park and Rec Board meeting for November of 2021. And I'd like to begin with the,
This is for any members of the public, Margie, to join the webinar, to view the agenda, and for public comment. They can go ahead and raise their hand, and I will click on them and ask them to go ahead and identify themselves, and those are the ways.
Okay, thank you, Cassie.
You're welcome.
Okay, then I guess we'll begin with a roll call.
Margie.
Here.
Danny.
Here.
Sonia. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Sonia or ask her. Sonia, you're muted. We'll come back to Sonia. Wendy.
Here.
John. Dale. And then Sonia, I see you again. Sonia, is that you and ending 40?
There we go. Did I make it? Did I make it in? I clicked the right button. I'm here.
Okay. You're not call ending 408?
Oh boy, I don't think so.
Okay. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. So let's begin with approval of the minutes from the October meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
This is Wendy. I second.
Okay. So moved. Minutes are approved from last month's meeting. Next on the agenda, do we have any announcements?
I do not have any particular announcements that we won't be covering through the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. How about any public guest comments at this point?
I just want to share, since some of the folks that are here, they are all here to my knowledge for an agenda item. So unless you had something non-agenda related, we'll be getting to your item shortly.
Okay. All right, then let's move into the action items. First on the list is a Public Works water quality sign replacement. And that's Dave Selvage and Tracy Campbell.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. David, did you want to introduce the item? Or did you want me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Park Board. Today we have Tracy Campbell here with us with the Stormwater Program from Public Works. We have a request for a new sign copy at what we call the Water Quality Kiosk, which is on the south end of the Van Buren bridges, right on the Milwaukee Trail. It's been a sign that has not received a lot of regular copy changes, and we are excited to have a partnership with Stormwater, who could provide for regular or more regular updates and copy to that. We're requesting your approval and that we turn over actual sign copy after this over to an administrative function with Ecosystem Services, who has been working fairly closely with Tracy on a number of initiatives. With that, Tracy Campbell.
Thank you. Nice to be here today. Thank you so much. So I manage the city's stormwater utility and kind of have two functions, and that's the operations and maintenance of our stormwater assets, in addition to compliance with what is called the city's MS4 permit. So similar to how the wastewater treatment facility has a permit to discharge treated effluent to our water bodies, the stormwater utility has a permit, or actually it's the city's permit through the Department of Environmental Quality to be able to be permitted to discharge stormwater to our water bodies. And so in order to be permitted to do so, we have to comply with the conditions in this permit. MS4 just stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Since we're not connected to our wastewater system, we have a different, completely different infrastructure, pipes and dry wells that connect to water bodies. So part of that compliance with that permit is conducting public outreach. And so that's where this sign is really going to help us, I think, to reach a lot of people. We know that's a really high use area. Yeah, so we're really excited to be able to reach a lot of people through signage there and updating it regularly. And we've also been able to collaborate with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, who have developed signs as well. And so that's the first sign that we would like to change out, is one that has been drafted by the tribes.
Just a bit of background for the board members. Any new installations, art, interpretation, memorials that are outside of park naming, park rules, and the already approved memorial tree and bench program are brought before the board. We do get a surprising number of requests for installations and signage, and just about everything you could possibly imagine. And so it's been a board policy for several years, perhaps 15, that we bring all of these changes or improvements that are outside the regular signage to you for approval. And this is one that we, as a staff, are recommending support for.
When would the sign be installed?
Well, my goal is to have the new sign up before the end of the year. So hopefully to get it printed and up before the end of the year.
Okay.
And then changing out
I guess I would like to try and do it quarterly. So potentially every 3 months, I think I'd like to have fresh signs. And open to your, your input or your suggestions. I think you're probably more familiar with creating signs and what, how long something should be up to, to be effective and reach an audience. So we're open to what you all think.
I think it's very dependent on content, and if the board wishes, we certainly, as a staff, happy to work with Tracy on that. David, if I'm not mistaken, you're recommending that changes in content would be approved administratively by the department once the park board approved the location and the partnership with stormwater.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll say too, so we have a public communications specialist for Public Works, Lori Hart. And so anything that we put out on social media or any kind of signs that we use with the public goes through her for approval. And I think there was also, I believe it's Becky Goodwin for Parks would also, want her input as well to make sure that everything adheres to both of the department standards.
So I think it's up to the board if they want to make a motion for further discussion or potential vote, or if you want to hold this item for consideration for another month.
Well, this is Wendy, and I'm fine making a motion if it seems like we're ready to go, unless anyone disagrees with that. So I would recommend that we approve the proposed new signed copy and direct future signed copy replacements be approved by Parks and Rec staff, subject to Public Works entering into a Partners in Parks agreement.
Do I have
I
a second?
second
for the
that.
motion? Okay. So approved.
So Margie, you want to ask if there's any additional discussion from the board or any comments from the public, and then you can call for the vote.
All right. Are there any additional comments or discussion from the board? Any additional comments from the public? Oh, sorry, Wendy, did you? No, okay. Any additional comments from public?
No comment from the public.
Okay. So all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. So motion's passed.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Tracy.
you so
Thank you,
much. I really
David.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Mhm. So next up on the agenda is the Peary Park encroachment review and permit issuance. And that's Jeff. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be back. As a reminder, I brought this agenda item to Park Board back in September. And at that time, we discussed the extent of the encroachment. I will go through this again, sort of review documentation in a second. Had a discussion, and then there were requests for additional language in the draft encroachment, as well as outreach to Ward 5 council members. And so I will review that very briefly. So I'm going to share my screen here just as a reminder for the public and for those folks that have not are not aware of the location that I'm talking about. So if you can see my screen, Parks was made aware of an encroachment into Peary Park at 2415 South Hills Drive. And for reference, this overview is looking at the overall South Hills neighborhood. If you zoom in a little further, you can see the park denoted here. And if you zoom in even further, you can see on the property information system the extent of the encroachment into Peary Park. So as a review, we were made aware of the encroachment. Parks engaged with city legal to provide a notice to the homeowner. After that time, there was additional investigation on the extent of the encroachment into the park. And it was determined that, I'm going to scroll down here, the existing encroachment into the park consisted of a large portion of the driveway, a portion of the deck, and it's not shown in all of these photos, but a portion of a gravel parking pad and actually a concrete wall on the south side of the house, totaling 2,101 square feet of encroachment into Peary Park. I do want to qualify this in saying that these improvements were made back in 1998 when the prior homeowner owned this property. At the time, that homeowner properly secured a building permit for the detached garage behind the house, but did not secure the required paving permit for the driveway. And at that time, the driveway was paved directly onto park property. So in the intervening time, the property changed hands. The current homeowner was not aware that this was an encroachment onto the property. Again, the city was made aware of this issue because this homeowner, and you can see it here, started basically applying topsoil and seeding into park property and put up signs, which I will scroll to here shortly, saying that this was not a trail and that it's not public property. So in attempting to remedy that, Parks Department looked up City Resolution 8024, which applies a zero tolerance policy to any encroachments into parks property. And in this case, this is quite a significant encroachment. That resolution allows for the application, or excuse me, the request of a variance to that zero tolerance policy only if the Parks Department and staff recommends that there is a public benefit from issuing said encroachment permit. So in this case, and again, what we discussed in September was that this encroachment predated the current ownership of the property. It does provide functional access to the properly permitted detached garage. However, it is a significant encroachment into park property. Conveniently, the Resolution 8024 very clearly states the process by which Parks has to follow in order to pursue a variance to the resolution and therefore issue an encroachment permit. And that very clearly states how the per square foot value of said encroachment would be valued, and therefore the overall cost of issuing the permit to the homeowner. So back in September, there were some additional requests in terms of improving permit language to talk about the direct public benefit. There was also some requests in terms of reaching out to Ward 5 council members, Anderson and Contos, to inform them of the situation. Lastly, there was a question from Board Member Harris asking about whether or not the homeowners were supportive of pursuing the variance. And to that effect, I actually requested that the homeowners legal counsel review and make proposed edits to the draft permit that was shown to Park Board in September. So I will go through those documents quickly here and address the requests that were made back in September. So Donna, as Parks Department Director, reached out to council members Contos and Anderson about the issue. They were sent the entire draft easement language and all of the exhibits. At that time, they did not respond and essentially did not request a meeting. And so we elected to move forward. They were given about 2.5 weeks in order to respond, and elected to move forward as is.
Jeff, if I might,
yes, please.
It is with a positive. Keep in mind that both all 12 council members are aware that there are encroachments all over the community. And I viewed the response as not a lack of a response, but a note of understanding and go forth per the resolution and the policies.
Great. Thank you, Donna. So understanding that, we elected to move forward with amending the permit. And the second request was to update the draft permit language to discuss exactly how funds raised from issuing the permit would be used in terms of park improvements. So to that effect, you have two versions of the draft permit in the agenda packet. The first one with the blue edits here is the version that I edited to adjust language. And there were several additional sections added to address concerns that were brought up in September. The first being the use of permit funds for cost recovery and park improvements. And this is directly related to the language in Resolution 8024 that says there's a specific cost recovery component, so a $495 variance request fee that would be used for cost recovery of staff time. And then the additional $500 plus the fair market value of the square footage of the encroachment would be used, in this case, for direct improvements of Peary Park. I've also included an attachment, the very end, I apologize for this, of the exhibit document that shows the existing trails, where they have been improved recently, and where we would propose to add additional connections. And so if you look at this document, you can see that the trails in blue here, the Parks Department improved last year. We had overwhelmingly positive response to updating the trails there, fully re-graveling them. We had put very minimal investment into this park for a long time, and so this was very positively received. There are two north-south connector trails here in purple that run along existing easements. These are in some form of disrepair and could use a minor amount of improvement. And then there are additional neighborhood connections into the park that could be improved or created. That includes from South Hills Drive here all the way down to the main body of the park, connecting Highwood Drive here to Highwood Drive on the other side. There is a social trail here, but it's not improved in any way, as well as connecting several streets from the south via existing park property to the trail system. And so right now there are no improvements here. Funds from the issuance of this permit could be used to improve access to the Peary Park trail system. In addition, in conversation with the homeowners legal counsel, there was conversation around the valuation, or sort of the fair market valuation of the property. And I made it very clear when I was speaking on the phone with him, as well as Susan Aberg, or Auberg, our associate city attorney, was on the call, that I am not willing to undervalue park property. And so the requested edits, this is the second version of the draft encroachment permit with red edits. These are requested by the homeowner. You can see here that they requested a total fee structure that was different than what we originally discussed. And this was to use a per square footage valuation of approximately $1.56. That is not in line with the resolution. If I go back here, I added a section to discuss how we calculated the per square foot value of $2.03 approximately for the area of encroachment. This was based on a 0.6 acre property just south of Peary Park that was disposed of by Public Works in 2020. It's directly adjacent to public property, and it was sold to a private homeowner. At that time, the per square foot valuation of that property, which is again very similar to this, was $1.56 approximately. We all know that the value of property throughout the city has escalated dramatically in the last year. And so in September of 2021, when these calculations were made, I randomly selected 10 homes within the surrounding neighborhood to assess property valuation increases, and that came out to approximately 30% above the August 2020 valuation. To that point, we recalculated, rather than $1.56 per square foot, a fair market value of $2.03 per square foot. So that section was added into the draft encroachment to address the valuation question. And then again, there was a question from Board Member Harris about the requested, whether or not the homeowner was on board with the requested extent of the encroachment. And as you can see in this version, again, it's a little bit messy here, but they requested a significantly larger area to be covered under the encroachment. So what I presented back in September was an approximately 1,300 square foot encroachment, which covered the paved driveway, a very small portion of the wood deck, and that was it. And what the homeowner has requested is that the additional approximately 600 square foot gravel parking pad, which again existed prior to their ownership, as well as a concrete block wall on the south side of the property, also be added so that the entire extent of the current encroachment is permitted. So for a total of 2,101 square feet. To that point, if the board were to elect to recommend that the extent of the encroachment area be expanded to uncover the 2,100 square feet, then the total cost calculations, here for the issuance of the permit would need to be updated, because this is based on the 1,300 square foot extent of the permit, as was discussed in September. So there's a lot to consider here. I do believe that the homeowner's legal counsel is actually called in and may want to provide comment. We recommended that they do call in. I don't know if Cassie can share that.
So right now we do have Schulte Law Firm I'm going to allow them to talk. They have their hand up. Let's see, you are muted. There.
And I am now unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. I'm trying to turn on my camera here. I don't know if that's on your end, but it's not recognizing me on video.
Cassie's working on it, but you can go ahead and at least.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the time, and feel free, please interrupt me at any time if you have questions. But I wanted to run through a few of the issues with this specific encroachment that I think should change maybe the way the Parks Board looks at this a little bit. First is that these encroachments are by the prior owners. They were done in 1998. Mr. Weston is asking only that the encroachments by the prior owner be permitted, and that does include the gravel parking. Now, it has been surveyed, so we do know the exact boundaries of the encroachment, and Mr. Weston did pay for that survey. But importantly is that these encroachments were permitted by the city of Missoula back in 1998. And if you look at the exhibits that Jeff put together, the permitting application is noted as Exhibit C, and you'll see on there that there is an attachment that shows the garage, the driveway, the house, the deck, and the attachment does not show it encroaching on to the common area property of the homeowners association. So that does create some unique issues here that I think we need to address when we look at the overall structure of the best way to proceed here. The next thing is that Mr. Weston is a fully disabled veteran and he's on a limited income. The money that he pays here, he is going to have to borrow. The last thing, and thank you if that's Jeff sharing your screen, that is the exhibit that is attached to the permitting from 1998. And you can see that where it lists the common area, where it shows the driveway, and where it shows the property line, which we now know is an incorrect illustration of the property line, but it was in fact approved by the city of Missoula, and then they wrote in the top right stamped in the bottom right, paving permit required for the driveway that's already located. The next kind of issue that's developed here is the common areas were actually never deeded to the city. Peary Park was deeded to the city at book 92, page 660. And this was done back in, let's see here, 1977, I believe on the same day that the homeowners covenants were put together too. And the plat for the subdivision says that common areas shall go to the public forever, but it looks like a step was missed where it was actually transferred to the city, and only the 5.7 acre Peary Park was transferred to the city in actuality. The next thing, and this is a huge issue for Mr. Weston, is how much can he afford to pay versus the valuation of this. And when we started this process, neither Jeff, Susan, or myself were aware of resolution 8024 that adopted a zero tolerance policy and began the process of essentially the process of paying for encroachment permits. And I think, and these are not issues that Mr. Weston wants to engage in, but they are reasons why we should look at this a little differently. The resolution directed the city of Missoula to begin work on draft ordinance to codify and implement the process, and no ordinance was ever created. So I think there becomes an authority issue on a resolution not being created, but not actually following through with the process of creating the ordinance that creates the codified legislation for valuation of property and purchase of permits. So what we did in trying to take that all together was find a good medium here where we could create defined public benefit through payment of funds by resolving this uncontrolled encroachment, by making sure that this trail remains open, whether it's a part of the homeowners association or owned by the city, and that money was created to improve the parks in the area that Jeff did a good job of pointing out. And we arrived at a value of $2,500 for the permit, plus a $500 permit fee, and I believe a second $495 permit fee, for a total payment of $3,495 that, again, Mr. Weston is going to have to borrow to make that payment to the city. The other changes we had to the draft document, and I apologize, I haven't seen the newest draft that Jeff showed that had some of the blue language he noted, but we made changes just to show to specifically describe the scope of the encroachment that was created in 1998 to include the driveway, the portion of the deck, the gravel parking, and there's a concrete retaining wall at the top of the hill that meets the top of the driveway. So the permit itself is only for the encroachments that were created in 1998 by a prior owner and were arguably permitted by the city.
I did want to mention that we also have Susan on the line. She is not a panelist, but she is calling in. And as Dwight mentioned, there is a building permit from 1998, and it does show the driveway not going onto the adjacent common area Peary Park, right? As seen here. And there was a paving permit required, which was not acquired by the homeowner at that time, meaning that regardless of whether or not the exhibit here or the building permit was correct, there was a significant, and again, we now know 2,101 square foot encroachment into Parks property. Do any board members have any questions about the issue or sort of where we're at with the process?
Jeff, maybe you could just very cursory do a explanation between the two, the differences in square feet of encroachment.
Yes. Thank you.
And then the differences, are you talking about a difference in value per square foot or a total difference in value? I think if you just reiterate that, that's going to help the board quite a bit.
Great. And I'm moving to a different exhibit, which will help illustrate this very quickly here. Okay, let me share my screen again. So, as you can see.
Can you enlarge your documents too, Jeff? That'd help.
Yes.
There you go.
Yep. So as you can see here, this is the property boundary survey that again was paid for by the Westons. And it shows the extent of the encroachment onto park property. So back in September, what was proposed in terms of the encroachment area was the paved, essentially the edge of the paved driveway. And actually, I didn't realize at that time it did include this concrete block wall, but this area is approximately 1,300 square feet. And so that is the area that was discussed for the at the $2.03 per square foot area. What the Westons are requesting is the entire permitting of the entire encroachment, existing encroachment, which includes the gravel parking pad, again shown here. I apologize for those pop-ups, at 2,101 square feet. They're also requesting that a flat fee of $2,500 for the valuation of the property is applied. What I would request of Park Board is that the fair market valuation as stated in the Resolution 8024 of the $2.03 per square foot is a much more realistic and fair market value at this time of Park's property, regardless of the extent of the encroachment which is permitted. So whether or not it's the 1,300 square feet or the 2,101 square feet, that fair market value, again, properly valuing Park's property for what it is worth, is applied to whichever extent of the encroachment Park Board is willing to recommend permitting.
So Jeff, I have a question. Is there an opportunity for this, for Mr. Weston to do payments over a period of time, since there seems to be an issue with him coming up with the money all at once?
My understanding, and Donna, you may be able to address this.
Yes, we could find a way there, Margie. We've not done that before for this kind of issue, but yes, we could make it doable over a couple of years, and then the encroachment permit would be issued upon payment and would be pending until the payments were final.
Thank you.
Jeff, oh, sorry, Jeff, this is Sonia. I have a quick question.
Yes.
Why are we including the gravel part? Because wasn't that added after the previous owner?
My understanding is that it was actually not. So in reviewing historic photos, it's a little bit variable. There is not great photography at this time, or sorry, in the intervening time between when the encroachment was put in and now. And again, my professional opinion would be that gravel and any surface that is not a hardscape has the tendency to move over time. And whether or not it's the current owner, the Westons, or a future owner, that has the potential to extend over time. One solution would be to actually create some sort of edging that prevents the gravel from moving and actually delineates the extent of the encroachment. Whatever that is, we could sort of find a mutual solution for that. But some way in which to prevent that gravel from moving further into the park, if that makes sense. And that was our conversation back in September.
Okay, so I guess, and maybe I'm not quite understanding.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So Jeff, what I'm wondering is that gravel part included in what he's going to be paying for, or is that going to be taken out?
Yes, so there are two considerations here, Sonia. There is what I originally proposed, or the Parks Department originally proposed back in September, which is an approximately 1,300 square foot encroachment, which does not include the gravel. And again, that is approximately 1,300 square feet, and I'm calculating values right now.
Okay, yeah,
And-
'cause, personally, I don't want to see it included because of some of the reasons of what you said, you know, how the gravel can move and, you know, and be in the park even more. So personally, I want to see that excluded, you know, not included in the encroachment and to go back to the park. That's
And I
just my
would like
opinion.
to, I'd like to interject here. The gravel was created, that gravel parking, in 1998. It existed when the Westons bought the property in 2012. And if we start talking about removal of some of these things, the cost structure of this from the Westons' perspective dramatically shifts. We do have a survey in place that has the exact locations of the gravel. If, you know, Jeff would like us to put, let's say, some sort of cinder block barrier there to keep it from moving, that is absolutely doable. And we could have Montana Northwest Company come drive a pin right there too, to show the exact location of this stuff. But from just a practical perspective for the Westons, if we start talking about removal of that gravel, the cost structure of this dramatically changes for them.
So this is Wendy, and got a couple thoughts. And the first one is, I just really appreciate the staff report, and you clearly heard the questions we had in September. And I really appreciate, especially the fact that you found a comp in the area is kind of amazing to me. And then you went and did further research. So I really, to me, there's two real separate issues, and one is the size and one is the value. And on the value piece, I just 100% support the staff recommendation on that. I think we have to be consistent, and there is, you know, an issue of public benefit here. So we asked for the staff to really dig deep and validate the actual cost of the encroachment, the value, and they did that. And so I feel strongly like I want to support that. As far as the, and I like the, you know, the question about the payment plan, because I also have empathy for the Westons, and I understand they didn't do this. And we're not trying to be vindictive about the Westons at all, but it's the precedent that the board, I know, is so concerned about here. And so the thing I don't understand, or I'm wondering about, is if we couldn't, I also would prefer just having the gravel removed. And maybe I'm missing something, but it doesn't seem like gravel is that big of a deal to remove. And I wonder the downside, if it's just money that's the issue, then you're going to have to pay less. Right? Or do I have it backwards?
No,
If the gravel, yeah,
Yep.
go ahead.
I was just going to suggest, I did just do a very quick calculation of the difference in permit cost by the two extents. So this is not including the associated fees, just the per square foot valuation. So at $2.03 approximately per square foot, the 1,300 square foot encroachment, which only includes to the edge of the paved driveway, would be approximately $2,640.63. And the 2,100 square foot encroachment, which includes everything as shown in the exhibit here, is $4,267.65. And so the difference,
that's great. Though the difference, sorry, go ahead.
Is exactly or approximately $1,627 less for issuing the encroachment just to the edge of the paved driveway.
Well, that's where I was heading, was that if the financial hardship is the big issue, which we all have a lot of empathy for, then the smaller encroachment is better for the landowner. So I'm just, am I missing something as far as the real cost of just getting, I mean, if the homeowner has to get the gravel out of there, am I missing something on the cost of that?
It is a
So
significant cost to Mr. Weston, and he's going to likely have to do the work himself. But I think we have to look at this from kind of the 10,000 yard view here, that these were potentially permitted, and that the Westons have a legitimate argument that the city maybe has stopped from making them remove these encroachments. And additionally, we have this issue that these lands were never actually deeded to the city. We may want to even consider having the homeowners association sign off on everything here, because as in the record, the homeowners association is still the owner of this property. And third, when we talk about value and we talk about the process here, the resolution was never codified. It was requested that ordinance be created to implement this exact procedure that we're talking about, but the ordinance was never done. This resolution was done in 2015, and that's why, I understand precedent. I understand that the city of Missoula has a lot of encroachments, but this one has very unique facts that maybe pull it out of some of those general precedent-setting decisions.
So I would love to hear, once you start talking about legal precedent, that's definitely out of my expertise here. So I'd like to, maybe Donna, maybe you can help us navigate your thoughts on how we address those issues that could have potential legal ramifications.
I did want to just chime in and say that Susan is on the line. I believe she may have just called in.
One quick question. Jeff, didn't you say, though, that when they built this driveway, they didn't get a permit to build it?
That is correct. There was a required,
Okay.
as stamped on the building permit for the detached garage, as shown here. There was a paving permit required stamp back in 1998. The prior homeowner at that time did not acquire the required paving permit, which again, in the exhibit, regardless of whether or not it was properly surveyed at that time, showed the driveway staying on the private property and not on the public property. And so again, there may have been an issue with the exhibit included in the permit, but the reason why the city requires a paving permit in that case is to make sure that property boundaries are respected.
Thank you.
Susan, are you available to, did you have a legal response as to the actions that staff is able to take related to a resolution?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
Can you still hear me? Okay. First of all, the city didn't permit that encroachment. As Jeff already explained, the homeowners back then never got, followed through with the permit. So in addition, when somebody builds a house, they take responsibility for building things on their own property. So I guess that's my response to that. And then as far as the resolution that hadn't quite made it into the code yet, the city staff is following that resolution, which is an expression of city council's desire on how they want to proceed on these encroachments. So even though it hasn't been codified yet, I have no problem with staff following what city council has set out in that resolution.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So it sounds to me that the landowner would rather have, am I hearing correctly that the landowner would rather pay the recognized amount per the analysis provided by Jeff at the $2.03 a square foot and maintain that 1,300 square foot?
Ms. Koppler, the landowner would absolutely prefer to have the 2,101 square feet of the existing encroachment. I have not talked to him about $2 per square foot. The comps that we found were less. And we have these issues that at some point the cost benefit analysis dictates what happens. And we're looking for, like we proposed, a $2,500 permit fee to take over the permit for these HOA lands. I have not specifically talked to them about $2 a square foot, but absolutely they would like to maintain the existing use of the 2,101 square feet.
Sure, right, but please understand that the majority of the public wants to retain their public lands. So that's the issue before the board, while trying to be empathic to the landowner in the situation.
So Donna, what would you like the board to do at this point?
The board has options. The board can make a motion to approve the agreement as set forth by Jeff, to accept amendments as requested by the landowner, to table the project one more time to try to resolve additional questions that might exist. I feel hopefully we're getting closer, but I can understand where board would still have more questions. And on any of those, so you could table, and on whether you move to go with what Jeff has recommended or to amend what Jeff has recommended with what the homeowner or something else in between, is your prerogative, and then your vote gives us direction. So if you ended up making a motion on any of these and it fails, then it's done. The landowner has to restore. And I think that's a difficult situation. That's more difficult than what we're talking about here of how much. We are trying to get to a place where there's not a complete demolition of things that haven't been properly addressed. And I know nobody wants to go there, so we're trying to find some middle ground. None of these are easy. So those are the options. And we're happy to do. And I think Jeff's done an outstanding job of research, and I appreciate Mr. Weston and his legal support in trying to state their case. And I think this is a tough one for our Parks and Recreation Board, but it's important. There's a city council resolution for a reason.
Mm-hmm. So do I have a motion? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would make a motion, and I just want clarification again, though. It's the 1,300 square feet without the gravel.
That is correct. And 2,101 square feet with the gravel.
Okay. I would like to recommend that we issue a parks encroachment permit to Mr. Weston for the 1,300 square feet into Perry Park, with permit fees to be used for park improvements.
Do we have to include the fee structure on this, or is that just sort of
I was going to ask to amend to include that.
Okay. Do I have a second?
So I'm assuming that you're going with the fee structure recommended in Jeff's recommendation.
Is that what?
Would you reiterate exactly what?
Yeah. Can you clarify in your motion which fee structure? Which?
Sonia, would you go back?
Yes,
and
it would be the fee structure for me would be the one of what was it? Where is it? $2.31. Excuse me, $2.03. Whoops, it just went away.
All right.
$2.03.
Yes. And then and then $2.03, the 1,300 square foot encroachment for the total of $2,640, and then with the permit fee of $3,140.63.
And I did just want to clarify, this includes this total permit fee, as stated in the resolution, is $500 plus the per square foot fair market valuation of the encroached area. which is why we went from 2640 to 3140.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we need to say that it's 3140 has the permit fee in the motion?
I think it'd be good to restate the motion, Sonia,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, and say the price per square foot and the area of the encroachment and then the total fee.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Wendy. Okay, so I recommend that we issue a parks encroachment to Mr. Weston for the 1,300 square feet at $2.03 per square foot with permit fees, and for a total of, for a total of the $3,140.63 with the permit fees to be used for park improvements. Is that
Okay.
close?
Yes. So do I have a second?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second it, Wendy.
Okay. All in favor? Or do we have any more discussion? Sorry.
The only thing I wanted to I wonder if we need, I really like the fact that what you came back with, Jeff, on the park improvements. I especially like you're creating more access through other avenues to get to the park. It's not just your, doing a little planting over here in this corner or whatever. So I don't know if that needs to be clarified at all, but I think I would hope that we are using the fees for the park improvements as described by Jeff in his report. Is that too narrow?
I did want to clarify that I put a number of potential improvements in here,
Okay,
including really focusing on access, but resurfacing trails would also be included. I would
Okay.
argue that would allow for an improved recreational experience on the existing trail system. So,
okay,
and I did state here, these improvements will potentially consist of new trail construction, trail resurfacing, installation or improvement of informational and navigational signage, and vegetation management and maintenance, which includes essentially maintaining the trail corridors over time.
that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
And then council, I'm sorry, park board chair, I think we want to make sure that any of the guests, including
Right.
the spokesperson for Mr. Weston, have an opportunity to speak.
Yes. So are there any other comments from the guests or board?
The only comments that I would have are what have already been stated. We'd really ask that the board consider the entire encroachment so that we aren't removing issues that have been there for over 20 years that were not created by the Westons. We ask that it be the 2,101 foot encroachment.
So noted. Are there any other comments by board members? Questions?
Yeah, I'm still just hung up on the differentiating between the 1,300 and the 2,100, and I'm looking for good pictures of that gravel driveway, and I'm just curious how much of a right of way park users still have to access the site with that gravel there, and how important it is that we remove it.
So you can see here, and I apologize, I don't have a scale on this photo, but there's approximately 35 feet between the edge of the gravel pad, and I'm guessing, approximating here, 35 feet between the edge of the gravel pad and the adjacent fence line on the other side.
Okay.
I will say, do note that the gravel parking pad is sort of relatively clearly delineated right now because there is seeded and mowed lawn on park property. This has been maintained as a lawn for a long time, and additional topsoil was added. If this is reclaimed to more of a natural environment, as the rest of Peary Park is, this would become significantly less obvious, I think.
And
Does
Madam
Mr.
Chair, if I may help, if the board does not need to do anything other than vote on the motion on the floor, but if one of the board members wants to amend, then you would vote on the amendment first, and then you would go back to the original motion if it failed, if the amendment failed. But it would require Daniel or somebody to make an amendment to the motion to the amount.
So does anybody, we have a motion on the floor. Does anybody wish to make any amendments or changes to the motion? Do I have any second on the emotion? On the emotion, a motion?
I think we already had a second, if I'm not
Okay,
mistaken.
we did, Wendy, sorry. So any further discussion?
Yeah, that's just looking over. I think I would just be in favor of doing the full 2,100 and then just making sure there's some kind of reinforcement so that it does not, so that the gravel does not move outward, I guess. And then paying the fair market value that Jeff came up with.
I think what Danny is saying is he would like
To amend the motion.
amendment to the number of square feet, and everything else would stay exactly the same. And so you would vote on that amendment first.
So Donna, sorry, which amendment do I vote on? We have two different. So we vote on his amendment to the motion.
Yeah, so your motion on the floor right now is the valuation stays the same. And so the different in the fee phase stays the same. And what Sonia has recommended is the 1,300 square feet. And what Danny is making is suggesting that the board votes to amend the 1,300 feet to 2,101 square feet. And so you would vote on the 2,101, and if that votes up, then you have it. If it votes down, then you go back to the 1,300 and you get an either up or down.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let us vote on the amending the motion from 1,300 square feet to 2,100 square feet. Thumbs, I guess, what is it? Thumbs up?
All in favor?
All in favor?
I say nay.
So
Nay.
okay, so you got one aye and two nays. So then you go back to the original motion.
Okay. So we go back to the original motion. Should we briefly go over the original motion again? Does everybody, so it's clear in everybody's mind? Sonia? Would you mind reiterating your original motion just so we're all clear?
Give it a try.
Okay,
I'm recommended to that City Council issue a parks encroachment permit to Mr. Weston, 1,300 square feet at $2.03 per square feet, for a total of $3,140.63 to be used for, let's see, with the permit fees to be used for park improvements.
okay, thank you. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I guess do I have to A or nay? I don't, I guess I'm just not sure how I feel about this at the moment. I guess I would be nay then.
I believe you can abstain from voting as well. Is that an option, Donna? That's on my side.
Yes, a board member may abstain from a vote.
Danny, do you have
Okay. Abstain.
Say the motion passed.
The motion passed.
Yes.
Margie, did you vote yes?
Yes.
Okay, so it's
I-
3-1. What we can do, Jeff, as our primary contact from Parks and Recreation, we can work with Mr. Weston. Taking down a gravel area should not be pricey or long-term. And I'm sure we can find a way to assist, and we can also assist with a payment plan if helpful.
I think that in terms of removing the gravel, we do have the ability to assist. If we're going to have equipment in that area making park improvements, we have the ability to some extent, reduce the costs of removing the gravel. So we have the ability to assist there.
Awesome. It's good.
That's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, our goal here is just to protect park property, not to, try and make life difficult for an individual. So anything we can do to help there that's within our parameters, we're happy to do so.
Yes, very much.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may we move on to the turf working group update?
Yes.
Only because so many, I believe the rest of our guests are here for that item.
Right.
I just wanted to say thank you, everybody. This has been a challenging and long issue. So thank you, everybody, for your patience and for allowing me to come back and present you a much more complete version of the draft permit.
Thank you, Jeff, for your diligent work.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I really appreciate the thought that went into this report today and your recommendations. So thank you.
And for
I
the
appreciate
sake-
that. Thank you.
Just
Okay.
for the record for Mr. Weston, if that message can get back to him, the park board has actually moved a long way over the 2 months with the additional work. So we appreciate your patience. I would suggest to you that it was leaning towards no. And so this is hopefully a satisfactory solution for everybody involved.
Thank you, Donna. So we're going to jump ahead to 3.3, presentation discussion on the turf working group recommendations. And that's Shirley.
Yeah, Shirley and I are going to tag team this just a little bit. So if I might, Shirley, do you want to talk a little bit about how the turf working group was created, why it was created, and then a little bit of the background on how we went through the process?
Absolutely. So if you recall, back in February of this year, we came to the park board and reviewed the criteria for selecting members of the turf working group. And we included all the representation from all the major user groups. So that included adult soccer and youth soccer, youth lacrosse, youth and adult rugby. And so one of the goals of putting this group together was to create some open communication that we felt we were lacking in with the user groups, and actually address some of the relationship regarding management of the fields to address their needs and goals and outcomes. So the end result would be to get some recommendations on how we should be managing. So essentially the group met 5 times. The first 4 meetings involved a lot of interest-based focus and creating guiding principles and education, discussion and debate. And then the 4th meeting, the group came together and actually developed some recommendations to the Parks and Recreation, how they felt like they wanted to see the areas managed. So the Parks and Recreation team went back and said, here's the recommendations, and how can we fulfill these requests? So we came up with some presentation on how we could do this work to provide the working group the product that they wanted to see. So essentially, some of it came down to things that we can do internally that were pretty simple and just create better communication. The other fees to create actual maintenance offset for the cost. So Donna, did you want us to go through the turf working group presentation or quickly, or just?
I was just going to touch on a few items and draw them to the board's attention. Interesting enough, we've all heard the cliche, build it and they will come. Wasn't a cliche at all. It in fact turned into reality. And you will see that there was a rapid increase growth in use, especially of the rectangular turf fields. When we designed the park to the specifications and requirements, keep in mind we had a number of specialized consultants and contractors who designed and then built this turf, and it was built on based on interviews with our actual sports user groups and their needs and their intended uses. So that not only did that include length and width and kinds of goals, but it also included sizes of bodies and types of sport, because that does change your lines. It does change your wear patterns. All those things are part of the consideration when designing turf. We learned through the process that it's been very difficult not only to deal with the growing number of turf users, but also the growing seasons. For example, we just finished the Montana High School Activities Association soccer season. And I think rugby and preseason soccer and lacrosse would love to get on the fields by February and absolutely by March. And per our weather, and based on turf science for when does grass actually grow and the temperature the soil needs to be for that to happen. Most of us see that in our yard in some way or form. At some time in April, our yards generally start to green up. So we have a gap in desired use of at least March 1st to about April 15th. And I just want to point that out because it's a pretty key part to some of the turf working group's recommendations. One thing I can tell you about the group is they were phenomenal at listening to each other and give and take and tug and pull and trying to recognize everybody and each other's needs, and that those needs are sometimes unique. For example, rugby is a very early season user, not only for practice, but for games. And because of the type of sport, similar to football, they don't need an extremely smooth turf surface for roll of ball. That's the whole point of the shape of the ball, right? Is it doesn't roll in a smooth directional planned pattern. On the other hand, if you are a soccer player and you have a ball rolling errant, it can have impacts on the game up to and including injury. So there are clearly different needs by these different groups. The other thing I wanted to point out is there are some challenges, not only related to early season, but we have a variety of things that the groups brought to our attention of people, in essence, using the fields without permit while others are playing by the rules and using permits. So we talked a lot about how to manage that. We are recognizing that as much demand as there is for early season turf. Shirley and I aren't the experts, but we do have Link and TJ online. They have not only been working with the original designer, the auditor, but also with additional auditors in the field and the Turf Growers Association, organic turf grower, Osborne, Chris Osborne, and a number of specialists in the area. So we have not focused on the word of one professional who in fact spent his entire life on this, but we've looked at several. We are looking at adding some additional sensors. There has been some complaints about moisture standing, and moisture standing is a problem for everybody, not just the athlete, but it also causes compaction, which causes more water to stand. The maintenance level, so going way back to our consultant team, defining a maintenance level for a typical Parks and Recreation department with pretty high-end competition, we had arrived at a maintenance standard of 3.17, which is pretty high because the scale is on a 1 to 5. So if you think of a 1, think of a one of our pocket parks that may not see a lot of foot traffic, or a low volume foot traffic neighborhood park, then move to a neighborhood park like a Bonner that might see real high traffic, to a typical sports field that might see a 3, to a highly competitive college, or even moving into the college realm that might see a 4. And then up above 4, you're starting to see college level turf where they're not actually even allowing practice other than maybe running final drills on their fields. And so what the turf working group has asked us to do is they want a stellar level of maintenance. And so we're going to try and move from a 3.17 to a 4.25 level of maintenance. And that is where the primary cost comes in, because we do need to buy additional equipment, materials, supplies, and most importantly, the big ongoing cost in addition to materials and supplies would be the additional labor. It is really difficult to implement any changes or increases to maintenance without additional humans. Keep in mind that the turf is already receiving incredible amounts of use. So by moving our maintenance to a 4.25, we believe we'll be able to maintain green fields and generally meet the group's wishes. I wanted to, we would stay with the continue resting of fields at certain times. We are recommending some snow clearance on the synthetic turf by a qualified volunteer group. This would be something very similar. How do we provide natural ice at Pineview Park through a volunteer Partners in Parks? We're working really hard in-house and with our turf user groups to identify additional and better places for practice. For routine practice, and also for specialized, for example, goalie practice or shooting practice, where you really beat up the areas that are super important, that they're smooth for certain sports. I'm going to jump you. So I talked about, we're going to look at it, spending a little bit more money on security. We did have some challenges last winter with multiple drives across the field, which actually caused us to close a couple of fields in the spring. We are looking to go to a two-way communication model, so folks don't have to wait. If they see something wrong with the field, they can contact us generally immediately. If it's, they can always contact us immediately if it's an emergency, but if it's a non-emergency, but something we need to get to very, very quickly so it doesn't become a worse situation, we're going to have a two-way contact. They can also report somebody unauthorized using fields. We added language, or we are looking to add language to the permit to address people who are not using fields in an authorized way per park board policy and city council approval of fees. And then we also have a plan here for future growth. Again, I wanted to show you how some things have changed. So we do have a better ratio of fields to population in 2019. And we have changed this inverted diagram here. But what we are finding is with the growth in sports and population, we actually are falling behind, and we need almost twice as many fields as we have today. So that's why we also took a future look. We did research inflatable domes, and someday I hope to be coming back to you with that. That does seem like something we might want to do in the future, though we may want a hardened structure so we can manage HVAC. We have year-round access because our hot, smoky seasons can be as challenging as our long winter seasons. So final recommendations. This one's difficult for TJ and Link, our experts in turf management. But they are willing to do this on a one-year trial basis, and then let's visit with the turf working group members again and see how it goes. But it would be to allow early season access to the rugby pitch, acknowledging that the surfaces may not be fantastic come spring, or even for Spring Maggot Fest, but that we are willing to give that a try. We would need to close it if the field became dangerous. And yes, we agree with the turf working group. This requires a lot of really close work with rugby, both adult and youth, and our staff, and it has to be continuous. We all agreed to establishing and using alternative practice and game sites. There was general agreement to increasing maintenance to better match demand so that we go from a 3.17 to a 4.25 on the scale of 1 to 5. I want to point out to you that there was general agreement, consensus agreement on everything I mentioned so far. But you will hear from rugby today that they do not want to pay the increased cost to get to that additional maintenance. The other thing I want to remind you is we're sharing with you today the recommendations for your questions and answers. We will bring forward a staff recommendation and an action item contained with the fee structure in December. So right now we are still working with our turf user groups. Shirley, TJ, Link, and Brian have a number of meetings lined up with user groups. They will be going through all this. What we're trying to do is build even greater consensus and particularly understanding. We get that we won't always get to 100% agreement on everything we try and do with all of our user groups and all of their members, but we're trying to get to a point where we keep a huge majority of folks happy. We had consensus agreement on the artificial turf shovel crew. And again, there's some risk there with damaging the grass or removal of the material that keeps up the attenuation or the safety. There was general agreement with increasing security measures while everybody recognizing that it is almost impossible to have a 360-degree surround park without access and still be able to all access it. We agreed to enhanced communications, and that seemed very popular all the way around. There was agreement, except from what I saw in rugby's response. They don't have interest in future additional turf. I admittedly, as Director of Parks and Rec, have not given up on them. I am always been a person that looks to our future and how do we serve our public. And I think it is a very premature when we have more demand than we have supply to ignore our future. Turf working group members did generally agree, I believe, to continue their ambassador role. I did get a sense that everybody was extremely appreciative. I would also suggest to you that my observation is there was beginning to be some exhaustion at numbers and hour and length of hours of meetings to talk about turf, but I think folks learned a lot, and I know that our employees, our staff, our team learned a lot in return. We all agreed that it would be a pilot year because none of us would want to do something that destroyed the turf or didn't make tournaments a possibility or completely removed those individuals who only have access to that turf through scholarship from using those facilities. And so that's essentially what this says. In addition to, there are some things that are a little bit difficult for our maintenance staff to settle with because they obviously pride themselves significantly in the work that they're able to do as professionals in providing high quality turf. So our primary thing that we want to share with you today is generally, I'm going to speak for our staff. We think it went well. We did commit significant tax resources throughout the past year to meetings, research and historical documents, education, listening sessions. Those are all part of what we do, but also it's important for you to know that that our parks operations team went ahead and they spent considerable resources by transferring resources from other needs in the system to pilot some of these turf improvements. And I think to their credit, I want to show you what some of that looked like. And so here are existing today's pictures of what the turf looks like. So I'm going to show a second picture. Can you still see my photo of a different look at the grasses? And then yet
Still on the first.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. So it looks like I need to stop share for each change in scenery for you. But I want to share these because I think they're important. This is the rugby turf grass today in close up. If you were going to go crawl on your hands and knees and run your fingers through that grass. And then there is one more here I would like to share with you. Maybe because I'm super pleased and proud of our staff and what they're able to do with the quality and thickness. I would also share that we did see a lot of positive comments. Brian and Shirley might be able to better speak to how the change in feedback happened over the course of the summer. So we feel like we're on a good route. Something unusual so far, what we've heard from our soccer, there's multiple soccer groups and our lacrosse group is they are supportive of a fee increase if it means they can continue to experience the turf they were experiencing recently after TJ and Link trialed some of these additional maintenance practices. I'm going to give Brian and Shirley a chance if they want to speak. And then I also want to make sure that Owen's been hanging in there for an hour and a half now. I want to make sure he gets a chance to speak as well.
One of the things that you have to realize is we walked into this year with damaged fields. When you saw the picture of the security and you could see the cookies that were spun all over the fields. And TJ and his crew did a phenomenal job of mitigating that damage. And I think part of it is the micro-fertilization program that they undertook by borrowing equipment from the cemetery and then allocating labor staff to actually apply the fertilization to the detriment of other areas. So.
Yeah, just to add on, this is TJ, I apologize, my camera is not working. Just to add on that for clarification, basically what we did is we implemented the maintenance recommendations from prescribed root zone from PRZ with existing resources. So we kind of shifted resources to do a trial run on our own. We actually got this report earlier in the year and we were kind of excited about some of the findings that we had. So this was sort of a trial run to kind of fine tune, what would work and what wouldn't, and kind of get to a budget and get to some numbers of what we're going to need going forward. And I think what we got to was results that I think that, generally everybody was happy with.
I think that's it for staff right now. We're obviously very happy to get questions from you, and we're any concerns, comments, other things you want us to consider. And I do want to give Owen an opportunity to speak since he's been waiting for us. Owen, do you want to go ahead? Are you able to unmute yourself?
Sorry about that. I'm at work. I just had to walk outside. Can you hear me?
Yes. Now we cannot.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. I believe we lost you again. Owen, unless I have lost contact, I believe we have lost you. You can go ahead and try again or interrupt us once you're able to speak, and maybe we can allow the board members to ask questions or make comment until you're able to get on.
Donna, I have a question. Do any of the high schools or middle schools use these fields for any of their sports?
I'm going to defer that to Shirley or Brian. They would know better who the rental users are.
The high schools do rent fields from us. Generally, they have their own fields, but during the high school season, we mostly host the championship games. And then Loyola doesn't have a home turf, so they rent every year their practice fields. And Valley Christian, I believe, rents their practice fields from us too.
So then surely would their fee also go up?
Hey guys. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I disconnected there. I just got back in.
Go ahead, Owen.
Okay. So I'm not sure where I cut out there, but I'm just going to repeat this. Not against future parks. We're just not against changing current fields into artificial fields. And we just wanted to make clear that we are opposed to increased user group fees to support increased turf level. We feel that the level of the turf field on the rugby field for current play is adequate for us. And just reiterate, thank you for having me here today. And thanks for giving me a moment to speak.
Thanks for the clarification and correction, Owen. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the, getting back to, so I think it's Sonia's question about fees. We're looking at the fees and analyzing it across the board. We've got some ideas about how to create discounts for groups that meet certain criteria. And I don't know if the high schools would or middle schools would qualify for that, but possibly. Haven't vetted that out yet. I'll bring that all to you next month as part of the policies of the fee schedules. So I just as soon wait for that piece.
Okay, thanks, Shirley.
Mm-hmm.
Did the board have any questions or, are you good with where we're going, I guess? Does that sound reasonable in approach and just looking forward to a formal recommendation with a set of fees and policies for your review?
Yes, it's an amazing piece of work to bring to all those people together and to come up with some recommendations or thoughts that almost everyone is in agreement. And it's kudos to all of you. That's really good work.
We have a very devoted, committed user group. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I look forward to a formal presentation or recommendation in December. And I'm sorry to hear about the cookies in the winter. That must have been I didn't realize that happened. What a mess.
Definitely. If it's okay with the board, then Shirley, maybe you can give an update on what happens next with master fee schedule. It seems like kind of a nice flow of topic.
Yeah, so we've got user groups meetings scheduled in the end of next week. And then we take it's kind of backwards this year. We're because of the holiday schedule, but the fees, the public hearing will be set on December, the first Monday of December, and then do all the review beyond that. So we'll take it to Conservation Committee and to the county commissioners, as well as the user groups, and then and our presentation to the park board. January 5th, I believe the first Wednesday of January is a review with the park or Conservation Committee. And then the public hearing will be the 12th of January. Wish I had the dates right in front of me. The 12th of January, and then the final reading will be the 24th.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley.
These are one of the biggest things we do, and as Shirley will share with you each year, we believe there's enough benefit in the delivery of services by Parks and Recreation. That'd be awesome if all programs were free, but we also recognize that a huge majority of the public, while they're more they generally seem very pleased to pay for parks, trails, open spaces, and playgrounds and shelters, and help subsidize certain recreation venues. They do like the idea that those who are direct recipients of the benefits of a particular program or facility, for example, if I reserve a picnic shelter for my own use, that I would pay a fee related to that. Fees do a couple things for us. In a good way, they increase and set higher expectations. They both ways in providing better services and facilities by the public or for the public from Parks and Rec. But they also, fees also cause people to commit to use of their facilities and their programs. We've all experienced free programs where nobody shows up at the last minute and you've spent all these resources preparing for them. Those fees then are also used to extend services to more people. In the sports arena, we extend more, services to the people who pay those fees. And that's why there's an enterprise account, and we're able to do something about some of the security or replacement and fixing things. And so anyway, and then the whole policy piece, that is really under the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board's purview of how management is carried out in a equal fashion through a lens of equity. So at times we move through so at all times we want to look through a lens of equity to make sure that all people, regardless of their demographics, are getting equal opportunity to play and participate and enjoy those many resources we have as a community. So we'll go into all of that. This is just a big piece. And I think, again, on behalf of our staff, hats off to, Owen and Bill and Gordon and Chris and Johnny O and a whole, several others who, Ryan, a huge number of folks who just gave a lot of hours over the last spring and summer to really try to better understand what we're doing and help us better understand what they need. So with that, all we have left are subcommittee reports, a Marshall update, and then just a general staff update. So it's your pleasure, Madam Chair.
Okay, why don't we do any subcommittee updates, because I see Donna's on for Marshall Mountain and updates, and then you could do both of those, Donna. So are there any subcommittee reports or updates? Okay, it doesn't appear there are any right today. So with that, Donna, why don't we jump over to Marshall Mountain update?
I'm happy to do that. And I see I have both, Jeff and Neil here. Marshall Mountain has been a big staff effort. We are working with a group of primary partners, including Izzy Dog and some of the existing land users, heavy land users like MTB, Mountain Bike Missoula, of course, Five Valleys Land Trust is at the table, County of Missoula through CAPS and PTOL, Parks, Trails, and Open Lands, and of course, our Conservation Lands Program. Jeff has set a new standard for signage on the mountain. So if you haven't been up there, I recognize that a lot of our board members may not be cyclists, but I'm pretty sure you're all hikers. And Jeff doesn't know this, but I took some folks up there this weekend, and I would say it is the best signage I see in the entire Missoula Valley for wayfinding. So hats off and kudos to Jeff. And then, so the Marshall Mountain Park is in use. We have completed a lot of the assessment of the site. And if you have not yet seen the 7 to 8 minute video completed by Nathan McLeod, our on-staff landscape architect, it's phenomenal. And I think what I'd like to do today, even if we don't get to all my report, if you are all willing, is have Neil share that with you, because it can tell you more in 8 minutes about Marshall than I could probably tell you in 20. Is that okay with the board? Neil, hit it.
You put me on the spot a little, so can you talk for like 30 more seconds and I'll pull it up?
I can. So we did kick off our listening sessions with our various focus groups. One more conservation aimed, one more recreation user group, one more neighbor and agency. We do have broad representation. This is a mountain park for all of the communities. This is not just a City of Missoula project. It's a multi-pronged project. We do happen to have the bulk of the employees, professional employees who do this kind of work, who lead processes, do design work, create videos that are pretty phenomenal, know how to maintain and sign and make available these facilities. And so a lot of that has been there, but it is the start of the visioning process. And then we are currently in process of development of winter park rules, if you will.
We're excited to start the planning.
Oh, here we go. Ready, Neil?
Yes. Let me share. Thanks, Donna. Can you guys see the Marshall base area now?
It's coming. Yes, there it is.
Okay, let me see sorry if it's slow. Let me know if it is. Welcome. We're excited to start the planning process for Marshall Mountain Park. I'm Nathan McLeod from Missoula Parks and Recreation. As part of our visioning process, I'll be taking you on a virtual tour of Marshall Mountain today. Marshall Mountain is an old ski area 5 miles northeast of Missoula. It's adjacent to thousands of acres of publicly owned city, state, and federal lands. The ski area closed in 2003 and was purchased in 2021 by Izzy Dog. It is currently open to the public and operated by Missoula Parks and Recreation under a 12 to 24-month lease agreement with the option to purchase the property. Lots of people are familiar with Marshall Mountain. Over the years, thousands of Missoulians learned the joys of sliding on snow at Marshall. In more recent years, the mountain property has been used for events, parks and recreation programs, and competitive races. Marshall is touched.
Neil, please unmute. We can't hear the video.
Marshall will be for the next 70 years. The future is now. Marshall Mountain's history as a ski area dates back to the 1920s when a group known as the Montana Mountaineers were conducting ski tours in the Missoula area, including Marshall Ridge. The first ski tow in the canyon was constructed on the adjacent private property in 1937 from old motorcycle parts. The history of Marshall Mountain as a commercial ski area really began in 1956, and the mountain continued to operate as a downhill ski area until 2003 when it was closed, primarily due to declining business from a lack of snow. Generations of Missoulians have learned to ski and appreciate outdoor recreation at Marshall, and there is a strong sense of nostalgia for this place. In the last few years, Missoulians have taken to Marshall Mountain for non-motorized, human-powered activities, including backcountry skiing and mountain biking. The historic ski area is made up of 2 parcels. The lower mountain is owned by a local company called Izzy Dog and operated by Missoula Parks and Recreation. This is where the base area and lodge buildings are. The upper mountain is owned by Five Valleys Land Trust and has been open to the public for several years. Most of the recent trail development has occurred on the Five Valleys property. The ski area also included a permit area on the adjacent Forest Service land. This permit allows certain activities related to operating a recreational ski area to take place on National Forest property. For the purposes of the visioning process, we will assume that the project area includes the 2 privately owned parcels. However, we hope to work with the Forest Service to integrate Marshall Mountain into the wider landscape. The total project area of Marshall Mountain is 320 acres. Let's take a comparative look at some of the other recreational mountains nearby. By comparison, Whitefish Mountain Resort is 3,000 acres, and Montana Snow Bowl is 2,243 acres. Little Marshall isn't much in comparison, but what it lacks in acreage, it makes up for in heart. The Marshall Mountain base area has an elevation of 4,000 feet. This quickly rises to just over 5,000 feet at the top of the Five Valleys parcel, while the top of the Forest Service permit area is just over 5,800 feet. Much of the 2 properties are quite steep, with a fair amount of the lower mountain being over 30% slope. Only several acres at the base are under 5% slope. The upper mountain has slightly less steep slopes, yet access is through the steeper terrain below or along the 3-mile non-motorized Forest Service road from the Green Gate lower down on Marshall Canyon Road. While Marshall Mountain has been a recreation area for many years, it's also an important wildlife habitat that has numerous unique natural resources on site. Marshall Creek runs through the property and supports native trout and a variety of aquatic wildlife. Several springs exist on site, providing year-round water to wildlife. The vulnerable flammulated owls are known to nest nearby, and many habitat trees have been inventoried on the property. Deer, elk, moose, lynx, bear, and other large mammals likely use the property, as well as numerous smaller birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. While Marshall is an important recreation park, a balance must be struck between recreational development and natural resource and habitat protection. There's a lot of existing infrastructure on the property in various states of functionality or disrepair. There are lodge buildings, aerial lifts, storage sheds, garages, electrical lines, lights for night skiing, snowmaking pipes, wells, septic, the list goes on. As part of the master planning process, detailed inventory and analysis of this infrastructure will be completed to determine the feasibility of reusing, repairing, or removing existing infrastructure. Questions that will likely need to be answered include, will the lodges be usable? Can the lifts operate? Is snowmaking feasible? At this point, the answer to most of these questions is maybe. While we don't want to take ideas off the table at this point in the visioning process, we also must recognize what is realistic. Is investing $1 million to operate the lift a worthy cause? Does it make sense to take water from Marshall Creek to make snow for skiing? Or does it make more sense to spend money to remove much or all of this infrastructure and restore the area to a more primitive state? A thorough feasibility study and operational business plan will help answer these questions and will be a part of the master planning process. But the discussion about these trade-offs starts here with this visioning process. So let's talk about this process moving forward. We're beginning the community visioning process now, which will provide the vision and guidance for a more detailed master plan. The master plan will include a feasibility study and operational business plan. The fundraising campaign will be ongoing with a goal to acquire the property by the end of 2022. We hope to start implementing the master plan sometime in 2023. The plan will likely be implemented in phases, which will be influenced by the outcomes of the planning process. It's important to remember the park will be open to the public throughout this process. Thanks for watching. Please visit engagemissoula.com, which we will continue to update with new information on the property and the process. This website is the best place for our community to provide feedback so you can help shape the future of Marshall Mountain, a place that the city of Missoula is committed to making open and accessible to all.
Thanks, Neil.
Sorry, I had a squeaky chair.
Thanks, Neil. That helped a lot, especially with the timeline.
So that's been one of our bigger projects, and we just wanted to touch base. Jeff, was there anything you wanted to add from your perspective as a land manager and prepping for winter?
No, I mean, I think that again, we're committed to honoring sort of recent historic uses of the property. And so the area will be open for passive winter recreation, just like it was open this summer for passive summer recreation. And so right now we're working on making sure that MMA, our insurance agency, any of the signage that we're producing and the policy that we're generating is acceptable and reducing liability to the city, as well as allowing for, passive, safe, enjoyable winter recreation.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Donna, would you like to go into your updates?
Sure. And at the same time, the last thing on Marshall, I do want to share with you is we are in the process of developing a permit and policy because we view it as a regional park. It's sort of like a unique hybrid of a jumbo intended to be a Fort Missoula Regional Park. So heavy use. And so we're going with a sort of a hybrid permit that looks a little bit more like a park use permit than a conservation lands forest service permit. We want it to be easy for the users, the traditional users, as well as new. And we don't anticipate a lot of new events this winter. We're trying to stay with very traditional because at this point, we do not have any additional budget for any kind of operations or program services. So the programs that we will try to limit it to are those that really speak to the general public in viewing this as a park. And we do continue to work with MTB and some of the other nonprofits and private for-profit folks who have been hosting events up there. So you know that fees and charges and permits and policies are coming next. That's huge. On November 4th, we completed the bulk of our upfront visioning process for the Currents Center for Recreation and Creativity. That would be an expansion of Currents by about 80,000 square feet. It would include, and I know you had a presentation last month, so it included a gym, a multi-form black box theater, classroom, studios, fitness space. We are not looking at a big cardio space. If anything, we would maybe have some exercise equipment for more for adaptive and PT/OT use than anything that would look like you would find in a fitness facility like the Peak or the Y, for example. The working group provided their general consensus agreement as to the design at our November 4th meeting. I was asked to write up what that looks like in words, in narrative, and then we will pass that. I just completed that. We'll get that back to the working group, give them about a week to review it. And then in December, we may be ready to advance a recommendation to the board, definitely no later than January. What the board would be doing with the community center design is reviewing the public process, the design, and then we have been working on cost estimates in today's dollars escalated for at least 2 or 3 more years. And we've also been working on a business plan. And important to note, a business plan for a community center of this design, where our focus is really on everybody has access, especially those who typically do not, puts us in a place where this project would probably need a greater tax support subsidy, something more akin to a Fort Missoula, because the park is open to everybody 365 days a year. And then there are fees and charges for the concentrated reserved uses. So it'd look a little bit more like that. It wouldn't be free like a library, but neither would it charge for example, the aquatics facilities together have an 80% recovery rate. So we're probably going to be more similar to a Fort Missoula Regional Park recovery rate, which is at about 38% today. So just to give you some ideas, it's a difficult thing to project because final construction and final pro forma numbers are always done on final design, not on conceptual design, but we need to get there in steps. And so we're doing that. We have a good conceptual design. We've had good public process. And then Ashley Brittner-Wells, the city's JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator, has been helping us a lot with outreach, hosting special sessions with various groups, hosting sessions on site at the food bank and at some of our other parks and recreation events where we get what I would call much more general population. We are going ahead with, we're receiving today responses to our RFP, request for qualifications and proposals for a construction manager at risk for West Side Park. So that's exciting. Our goal is to have a new park by next year. So those have been some of our big efforts. Along with Marshall Mountain. Of course, there's the Clark Fork River Access Project that continues to go forward, and we do expect to have something for the public as soon as December, no later than January. We didn't want to put another round of public review process up until we felt that the designs and the locations would be technically permittable, if you will, by the various agencies, because there's no point asking the public if they like something if it's not doable in the first place. And so that is progressing. Neil is moving forward on submittal of our sites, which is it's similar to LEED in buildings. And so it's a sustainability, environmentally conscious way of developing parks for Fort Missoula Regional Park. And we've been hiring a third LA to help us through some of these projects. David and that third LA, Garrick, is working on the fiscal year 22 approved budget, which is replacement of a handful of athletic courts, multi-use sport courts in various neighborhood parks. We're working with the tennis community on replacement of 12 Playfair tennis courts. They've reached their useful life. We got a couple of restrooms in the queue. And then of course, TJ and Link and Jeff Morgan and Ben in operations have numerous cyclical maintenance projects that they're all working on. And so it has been full steam ahead from every level. We did kick off some fun projects with the Lowell School Westside Park Neighborhood Center. We had an awesome parade. I missed it, but from everything I've heard about it, it was fantastic. We've started Dungeons and Dragons for kids over at the school. And then a lot of interest in after school and evening open gym and those kinds of activities as we slowly bring programs to folks. That's been a little bit of a challenge during the pandemic. I think Brian has been a huge asset for us in his efforts out at Fort Missoula Regional Park and building relationship with our turf user groups. And it's been nice to finally hear compliments about the turf, even from our locals. We've often and almost always received them from visitors, but it's great to hear it from our locals. So hats off to our team there. I think that's the bulk. Neil, is there anything I missed in your area that you want to make sure we touched on?
Nope. I was just going to say that they met Garrick last month, and he did the day in the life. And that's who's been submitting our sites paperwork and everything. So he's been doing a really good job at that.
Any questions for us? Otherwise, I think we ran right up to 2 o'clock.
Any future items? Any additions?
I know we'll have fees for you, possibly community center. I want to say there was at least 3 large items, and I can't remember the third one right now, but those 2 would be huge.
Okay. All right, thank you. If there's no other words, then I would like to close the meeting, and who would like to pass a motion?
This is Wendy, and I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Any
And I
seconds?
will second that.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Donna, and everybody for all your presentations and your participation today.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for running everything. Good
Goodbye.
job.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.